of the Islamic Society of North America, who says American Muslims in particular have an enormous responsibility to live as exemplary Muslims and to demythologize Islam to the American public. Hello and welcome to Penn State Public Broadcasting's Common Ground Lobby Talk, which is produced in collaboration with Penn State's Institute for the Arts and Humanities. I'm Patty Satalia. This is an open forum, and we invite dialogue between our special guest and our live audience. Let's begin with an introduction. Dr. Ingrid Mattson is the first woman president of the Islamic Society of North America, the post she was elected to in August of 2006. Raised Catholic in Canada, she converted to Islam at the end of her undergraduate studies, then traveled to Pakistan, where she worked with Afghan refugees. In 1999, she earned her PhD in Islamic Studies from the University of Chicago and is now director of the Islamic Chaplaincy Program and professor at the McDonald Center for Islamic Studies and Christian-Muslim Relations at the Hartford Seminary in Connecticut. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You converted from the Roman Catholic religion to Islam in your senior year in college. Converts are typically very passionate, and it's something that is very, very perplexing to many of us. Why did you convert? How did you become Muslim?
Well, I think it's important to say that when I became a Muslim, when I encountered Islam, at that point I was an atheist or agnostic or maybe just simply indifferent, not someone who was interested in religion or even had God in my life in any way. I had left the Catholic Church, left faith behind as a teenager, and never really looked back. So for me, when I encountered Islam and embraced it, it was the way for me to bring God back into my life. And I did so because of the power of the Quran and reading that and what it said to me about my place in this creation.
But you did describe yourself as a pious child, and it was a trip to Paris and then to Afghanistan to work with Afghan refugees where something happened. What was it that enhanced your vision of Islam?
Well, I first met Muslims, as far as I know, when I studied in Paris one summer, where I grew up in Canada. I don't think I knew any Muslims or even heard anything about Islam. So I was very fortunate that the first Muslims I met were students from West Africa, mostly from Senegal, who were just remarkable human beings, very dignified in the midst of great prejudice that they suffered in Parisian society. I mean, very overt prejudice and racism, but they had a dignity and a generosity of spirit that really impressed me, and that made me want to know more about them and their background. Since then, I've realized that they come from a strong West African tradition of Islamic Sufism, which emphasizes a kind of openness to others and the importance of living spiritually in everyday life. And they certainly did that, and that really opened my heart.
Interestingly enough, there are actually 2 converts in your family. You're one of 7, and you have an older sister who converted to Judaism. Tell us a little bit about that and what the reaction was in your household to this.
Right. I guess my family really does have a bit of a different experience than most Canadian or American families, although as our society changes and integrates, I think this is becoming more common. My sister is significantly older than I am, and she met a Jewish man and fell in love and wanted to marry him. And for the sake of the family and their future children, decided that for her to embrace Judaism would be the best thing. I think that may be one of the reasons why my family was a little bit confused when I chose to become a Muslim, because no man was involved. It was my own choice as a spiritual choice. And that surprised them because I wasn't someone who seemed to be looking for a religion, so it kind of hit them out of the blue. And not knowing any Muslims or anything about Islam, they were concerned. They didn't know what this would mean for my life, so it took a little bit of time for them to be able to be comfortable with it, realizing that it was something that that I could live and have a good life with.
Help us understand this. You have a doctorate in Islamic studies, and the two largest religions in the world, of course, are Christianity and Islam, both of which have divided. The Roman Catholic Church broke into various denominations, and Muhammad left no specific instructions about who should take over and lead the Islam, and the result was that split into two distinct groups, the Sunnis and the Shiites. What's the difference between the two, and does the Islamic Society of North America embrace both groups?
Right. Well, the major difference between Sunnis and Shiites is a theological difference based on the idea of succession to the Prophet Muhammad, and specifically who is authorized to interpret the Quran and the Islamic principles authoritatively. Shiites believe that authority was passed down to specific individuals in the Prophet's family, whereas Sunnis believe that it's a collective responsibility of the community to struggle with these texts and precepts and come up with their own conclusion. The Islamic Society of North America is open to all Muslims. Demographically, we are a majority Sunni, but we have Shiite members, and there's no criteria for sectarian exclusionary criteria for our organization. In fact, we had a Shiite president when in our first manifestation as a Muslim Students Association.
What's the relationship between the Islamic Society of North America and Middle Eastern Muslims?
The relationship is only one of emotional ties as part of the global Muslim community, but also we have developed primarily out of the experience of immigrant Muslims who came to study in the United States, found themselves wanting to have some sense of community as Muslims in what to them was a foreign land, formed the Muslim Students Association of Canada and the United States, thinking that eventually they would go back to their homes. Some of them did, but many stayed, had families. Their children didn't want to go back to Egypt or Pakistan or wherever they came from. They realized that this was now their home, and then developed the Islamic Society of North America as the next step, as the kind of fully adult organization that would represent all Muslims. And now our membership includes primarily people who were born in this country, whether they're from a Caucasian or African American community or second-generation Muslims whose parents immigrated, but they themselves were born here.
The organization itself was established back in 1963, and today you can count some 20,000 people among its members. What's the purpose or the mission of the Islamic Society of North America?
Our mission is to be a common platform for the diversity of Muslims in North America, and that includes individuals and organizations and communities. So in fact, our umbrella embraces even more than those 20,000 individual members, thousands more who are represented in the over 300 mosques and Islamic centers that are affiliated with our organization, as well as professional organizations like the Islamic Medical Association that are part of our membership body. Muslims in North America are highly diverse in terms of their outlook, background, in every aspect of demography that you could imagine. And what we seek to do is certainly provide guidance on some issues, but more than that, to provide a common platform for discussion, for dialogue, to engage all the different aspects of this community so that we can come to, if not agreement, at least come to know each other and work for some common goals.
You were the vice president of the Islamic Society of North America for 5 years prior to being elected in August of 2006 as president. Many people look at this as maybe the starting point of something bigger, that the significance is not only that you're a woman, but also that you're a non-immigrant. What do you believe is the significance of your appointment?
Well, certainly we're at the stage in our development as Muslims in North America where our leadership should reflect who we are as a community. And it's natural that by now this organization should have someone who's a native English speaker, for example. And this is not to in any way belittle the contributions of all those who served ahead of me. They did a wonderful job and built up this organization. But like every other Muslim community in the world, we should be having institutions and leadership that is homegrown and that is really embedded and relevant to the society. So that's what I see as primarily important. Certainly being a female is something that has gotten a lot of attention. And I think what's the most interesting thing is the fact that it was such a non-issue for our members, that it seems that it was a very natural development to them that having served my 2 terms as vice president, I would now have the opportunity to serve as president. So I think for many of us that was more surprising than anything, the fact that there wasn't a lot of discussion about it.
There are some, though, and I think it's a minority, who are opposed to a woman leading this organization. And in fact, there are some who use this saying, which is ascribed to the Prophet Muhammad, which translates roughly to, whenever God wants the destruction of a people, he makes a woman their leader. How do you respond to that?
Well, certainly there are those people who believe that Muslim women shouldn't have public roles. And the question is, what is their proof for that? There are many, many sayings that are attributed to the Prophet Muhammad, and Muslim scholars have always looked at those and tried to sort which are authentic and which are fabricated. Many of them were fabricated for political purposes or people who wanted to support their position, and that's what we have to look at when we see, in fact, and we weigh any particular saying against all the other things the Prophet Muhammad said, what he did, and also the message of the Quran, which is clearly states that Muslim women can contribute to the same level and in the same way as Muslim men. We see that women had public roles during the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad, and his immediate successors followed women who were in leadership positions. So when we look at the preponderance of evidence, I think we have to give these other reports their
Are you
place.
saying that that particular saying can't justifiably be attributed to him?
Well, this is a question of hadith scholarship, and I would defer that to those who have more who are specialists in that area, but there has been a lot of discussion about that statement and whether it in fact violates many other clear Quranic statements about gender equality, as well as other statements attributed to the Prophet Muhammad.
In your role as the president of the Islamic Society of North America, you say you have detected what you would call Muslim fatigue among North Americans. And in fact, you say, the sense I have from Americans is that they don't want to hear Muslims talking about Islam anymore. They just want us to do something to stop causing all these problems in their lives. And I'm wondering, is this the challenge for you as president? And what you're going to do to make Islam better understood among Americans?
I think the first challenge is to show that Muslims are like other people, in that we have our good guys and our bad guys. There are criminals in Muslim societies, just as there are criminals in Christian societies. The United States has around 2 million people in jail, probably most of them Christian. So we don't judge people and a civilization and a religious community by the worst of them. And I think that's the real challenge, because